Today you will see the rarest unusual photos as well as mysterious objects from the past. Let's get 10,000 subscribers. June 6, 1912. Gleb Kotelnikov, the inventor of the world's first satchel parachute, demonstrates his brainchild on a mannequin. Before that, parachutes were bulky and fatally unreliable. This experiment marked the beginning of a new era of rescue for pilots and parachutists. The village in the mountains of Dagestan, founded long before our era, now stands empty, like a stone echo of the past. Once there was a lot of life here, songs were played, children played. The last inhabitant left this world in 2015, and Gamsudal has been silent ever since. Spring of 1938. Little Anna is having a tea party with a lobster and a hawk, her only friends on a remote island off the coast of Wales. The parents were scientists and there were no other children around. There is touching loneliness and childish fantasy in these strange games. March 1940, Maginot Line. French soldiers change into women's dresses to distract their colleagues from thoughts of impending disaster. These ridiculous dances are a desperate attempt to preserve humanity in the face of imminent horror. Prambanan Temple, Indonesia. On the left is what remains of an ancient building from the 9th century to the beginning of the 20th century. On the right is the result of a painstaking restoration, like a rebirth from the dust. This is not just a temple, it is a symbol of the stubborn memory of the people. Leningrad, winter. The female hippopotamus, named Beauty, survived only thanks to Evdokia Ivanovna, who carried water every day, washed her, and hugged her during the raids. When the woman could no longer cope, the whole city stood up to protect the animal. The story of the Beauty became a legend of besieged Leningrad, about how people did not let even a hippopotamus die. The photo shows an antique copper mold from Stanley Soap Co., used for casting soap with an embossed inscription. These molds were manually filled with soap paste and then cooled to perfectly fix the logo. Peerless Rose soap was considered a luxury item and was often given as a fragrant souvenir at the beginning of the 20th century. A giant excavator digs piles of banknotes. This is how money from the Grozny Bank was destroyed after the fighting in 1995. Huge amounts of cash were declared valueless in order to prevent their circulation on the black market. Ironically, a fortune was literally buried in the ground, leaving no trace of the region's former economy. American nurse Amy Stewart sleeps, hugging a teddy bear tightly, right in a field camp during the war. The toy became an anchor of calmness for her, in the midst of the chaos and fear that surrounded her in the desert. The picture has become a symbol of the vulnerability and humanity of soldiers, even on the front line. In search of a living, an unemployed man turned his bald spot into an advertising platform for a sports magazine. He rode on crowded buses and trams, turning the back of his head into a walking billboard. This desperate but ingenious trick was 50 years ahead of modern marketing. Rural disco, Lithuania, the 90s. A girl in a miniskirt poses at a pole at the entrance to the village club, while men in leather jackets line up. This picture is the quintessence of post Soviet provincial youth culture. The photo shows one of the first attempts to create a store without sellers, goods behind glass, and order on a button. It was a futuristic response to the accelerating pace of life in America in the 50s. Despite its novelty, the concept turned out to be inconvenient and soon disappeared, but it left a mark as a prototype of modern vending machines and self-service markets. Demonstration of suits made of water-repellent fabric, 1948 USA. In post-war America, fashion faced a technological boom, and this photo is a good example. Engineers tried to integrate synthetic materials into everyday clothing, and such shows were held directly under the jets of water. These suits really didn't get wet. The effect was achieved by Teflon fiber treatment, which was a revolution in textiles. Nati Revuelta is Fidel Castro's lover. In the picture is a Mexican intellectual, doctor of sciences, mother, and part-time woman who had a huge influence on Castro during his years of exile. Her letters inspired Fidel at critical moments. According to some reports, it was she who helped him establish ties with the revolutionaries in Mexico and sponsored the first operations of the July 26th movement. Driva Geneve watch, Switzerland, with TV, calculator, and radio. The year is 1976. This device was decades ahead of its time. The clock was powered by miniature transistors, and the TV signal was picked up on a telescopic antenna. Despite the futuristic design, the model did not go into mass production due to the high cost and weak signal on a screen with a diameter of only 1 inch. Young African Americans in suits stolen during the riots in Harlem, August 1943. The photo was taken immediately after the so-called Harlem Riot, caused by racial clashes and economic inequality. The young Princess Diana with her guinea pig named Peanut, 1972. This is one of the rare home photos of Diana before she joined the royal family. The pig was given to her on her 11th birthday, and she really called it Peanut. The picture was taken in Norfolk, and for a long time was considered lost, until it surfaced in the private collection of a former governess. The legendary fake, Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe. This photo is one of the most famous fakes of the 20th century. At first glance, it looks like John F. Kennedy is gently hugging Marilyn Monroe in a secret room. But in reality, this is a production with doubles created by photographer Allison Jackson. Air Insurance Vending Machine, Newark, 1960s. Before the era of online bookings, U.S. airports offered insurance right in the terminals. You come up, insert coins, get a policy. It's like in a soda machine. This is a reminder of how dangerous and unpredictable air travel was considered in the middle of the 20th century. Bulgarian newlyweds in traditional outfits, 1893. This is not a fairy tale character, but a real bride and groom. The girl seemed to be drowning in a wreath of fresh flowers, silver coins, and ribbons. This headdress symbolized the prosperity of the family and fertility. The man was dressed in festive clothes with embroidery and a belt. In it, he had to prove that he was able to protect and feed his wife. This is not a montage or a shot from a science fiction movie. Nomura jellyfish is one of the largest sea creatures on the planet. Weighing up to 200 kilos and the size of a refrigerator, it can be found off the coast of Japan. Despite its impressive appearance, its venom is not fatal to humans, but it can cause serious burns. The photo shows a historical moment that is still remembered in Finland. On February 5, 1932, at 10:00 a.m., the first bottle of vodka was sold after the abolition of prohibition. The numbers 543210 have become a symbol of freedom. It's no coincidence that they even appear on labels. Prosperina Valle is an Italian partisan born in 1944. A smile, a rifle, and determination in his eyes. That's what resistance looked like. Prosperina Valle fought in the Italian Alps against the Nazis, becoming a symbol of women's participation in the war. Money Acceptance Center, Department Store, New York, 1903. This photo is not fiction, but a real money collection center for pneumatic pipes. Everything that the cashiers accepted from customers was sent here, into one of the hundreds of brass pipes. Cassandra Peterson, Elvira, 1980s. A look from the screen and next to it is Cassandra Peterson herself, the actress who created the image of Elvira, the fatal mistress of darkness. Afghan hunter in a fox mask, 1970s. An unusual headdress is more than a disguise. In Afghan culture, the fox symbolizes not only cunning, but also magical protection. Such a mask served 3 purposes at once: to scare away evil, to hide from the beast, and to gain hunting luck. Gillian Anderson and David Duchovny are lying in the morgue, not as victims, but as those who are looking for the truth beyond. This promo photo of the first season has become a symbol of the era of the 90s TV series. This heavy machine is an antique mechanical cash register from the early 20th century. Richly decorated, it once stood in the window of a fashion store, but now it is covered with dust and keeps silent about the lost era of trade. This picture shows Hannah Stilley, who was born back in 1746. This is one of the first photographic portraits in history, and perhaps the first ever image of a woman born in the 18th century, captured on film. Smiling at the plane is Hazel Ying Lee. During World War II, she joined the WASP Squad, a squad of female pilots in the United States. Her story is about bravery that defies boundaries and prejudice. Bench for Jews Only, Austria, 1930s. A woman covers her face while sitting on a bench with the inscription Nur für Juden, for Jews only. This frame became a mute witness to the daily humiliation that people faced before the Holocaust. German prisoners in Moscow, 1944. A column of 57,000 captured Wehrmacht soldiers marches through Moscow after the defeat in Belarus. This scene, known as the March of Shame, became a symbol of the turning point in World War II. Protest at the Olympics, 1968. Tommy Smith and John Carlos raised their gloved fists on a pedestal to protest racial discrimination in the United States. Their silent gesture cost them their careers, but it has forever gone down in the history of the struggle for rights. Pig Bottle, IV Century BC. A find from the Apulian necropolis. A baby bottle in the shape of a pig, about 2,400 years old. An amazing artifact in which the ancients combined care and the symbolism of fertility. 1903, Rope Pilgrimage. The legless man leads the blind man to the monastery, holding on to a string. The path of two suffering people to Sarov is a symbol of faith and poverty in Russia at the beginning of the century. May 1933, confiscation of books in Hamburg. The Nazis take out harmful literature from the house, one of the first stages of cultural censorship, which will soon develop into the total extermination of dissent. The 1990s, the girls from Artek. The form is like that of the pioneers, but the era is already different. High school girls from the Artek camp in the last years of the Soviet Union are a reflection of the transitional era. 1954, Hungary manufactures baby strollers for buses. Workers assemble strollers right against the backdrop of giant Icarus buses. Pre-war factories switch to peaceful tasks in anticipation of new instability. 1930, The Dance of Symmetry in Delphi. Two actresses in perfect synchronicity against the backdrop of an ancient amphitheater. The revival of the ancient spirit in color photography of the interwar era. 1955, The Tibetan with his tongue hanging out. A gesture in Tibet means respect and absence of evil intentions. This greeting seems like a grimace, but in fact it is a sign of respect for the guest. 1915, Women instead of horses. In France, animals were requisitioned during the war, leaving women to harness themselves to plows, a symbol of how the front turned life into a battlefield, even far from the trenches. 19th century, Japanese Inro box. A small lacquer container with a precious finish was worn on a belt instead of a pocket. They kept medicines, seals, or tobacco, a detail worthy of a samurai. In the photo is Mata Hari, a famous exotic dancer and alleged spy during the First World War. The picture was taken in the 1910s and captured her in one of the iconic images, with an ornate headdress and oriental costume. It was such performances that made her a legend, and her fate is still controversial. A seductress, a victim, or a double agent. Yuri Gagarin and Gina Lollobrigida during a meeting in Moscow, 1961. This photo is a rare moment when the scientific triumph of the Soviet Union intersected with the brilliance of European cinema. Gagarin, who has just returned from space, jokes and smiles, and the actress, like the whole audience, looks at him with sincere admiration. The atmosphere of rare openness and euphoria after a great achievement is felt in every face. The picture shows a party scene in Las Vegas in the 1960s, where two girls are dancing in a giant glass. Such outrage has become a symbol of the era, bright, defiant, devoid of modesty. This picture is often perceived as a visual embodiment of American decadence, a time when show business sought to surprise and provoke at any cost. The venue is one of the closed clubs where such productions were part of the program. Nikita Khrushchev watches a can-can dance during an official visit to the United States, 1959. The Soviet delegation was housed in a separate box, and, according to the expressions on their faces, what was happening was an unexpected sight for many of the guests. This moment was widely discussed in the press and became a symbol of the cultural contrast between the two superpowers. Can-can, as the embodiment of freedom and outrage, strongly contrasted with the ideas of morality in the USSR. Manchester Grammar School students march in costumes of owls, the school mascot. The photo was taken in 1926 and captures one of the unusual parades organized in honor of a holiday or celebration. The costumes were handmade, and the ritual itself symbolized unity and pride in the educational institution. Ivy Nicholson poses against the backdrop of Roman ruins, 1956. The picture was taken by the famous photographer Federico Garola and became a landmark for fashion photography of that time. The photo shows a ceremonial chest for storing betel leaves. Such items were often used in South and Southeast Asia during traditional rituals and celebrations. The chest is decorated with engravings and was created manually, often inherited. The pictures show a Japanese box with drawers designed to store tobacco, medicines, and small items. Its owner was probably a wealthy man who combined a Western style of clothing with Oriental accessories. Such items were considered an indicator of status and were handmade, decorated with lacquer paintings and inlays. Elvis Presley, who has just completed his military service, is playing guitar in the barracks. The year is 1960. For the first time, he performs a song he wrote called D-Mob. The picture became a symbol of the return of the king of rock and roll to civilian life. This car could be recognized by the characteristic protruding coffins. Inside, there were giant subwoofers. The picture was taken at the Philharmonic Hall, where such cars regularly arrived. The Soviet acoustics were not only loud, but also intimidating,